Use of intuition, developing your own intuitive faculties. One of the major problems, in fact the major problem to the use of intuition, the hunch, as businessmen will call it, the wild guess, which turns out to be right, precognition of various sorts, and so on, is generally limited by the fact that we have been trained to use our intellectual minds to such an extent that reason has taken the place of virtually everything else that we do. Because many, many people, particularly in this field, decide that they want to use the intuitive faculty, and so they say such things as, I am trying to learn it, I am trying to find it, without realizing that this is an intellectual approach, and therefore it doesn't work. All right? The intuitive faculty is developed purely and simply by allowing. It is an allowing. It is a not doing process. All right? And this means that you have to have some other input as such, or be aware of some input which is going to cause this to flow. I cannot describe it as feelings, and yet it is feelings. All right? It isn't thinking, but the thought process comes into it, because at some stage all we are doing in the intuitive process is analyzing symbols. In astrology, we have been apt to use symbols and attach them very specifically to words and phrases, and have thereby adopted, to a certain extent, the intellectual approach. Now, this is very good as far as it goes. However, when you look at a chart and you want to decide exactly what Uranus is saying, for example, if it is showing some sort of mechanical connotation, you have to go a stage further to find out exactly what it is. Is it electronics? Is it something to do with, as one I have found, the trucking industry? All right? We have to allow it to go. Now then, there are various approaches to doing it, but the first thing we've got to do is that we are all capable of it. Right? We are not gaining something new. We are getting something back which we have lost. Every single one of us is capable, but I am inclined to feel that the various signs, or various elements, depending on the strength of them within the chart, tend to make it a little bit more difficult, because we're seeing them through a particular filter. So that with the air signs, of course, we're strongly mind-oriented. The intellectual mind easily gets in the way, and it is very, very difficult in a large number of instances for the person to let go of the mind and just allow that to come through. In the water signs, emotion, the feelings, too often get in the way. And by feelings in this instance, I'm talking about the feeling of sympathy, feeling with, rather than empathy. Sorry, it's feeling for, which multiplies, as against empathy, which is the awareness of that person's feelings, but which also allows you to have an objective approach to it. In the fire signs, there is too often the feeling that you've got to act, you've got to do something, you've got to push. All right? We've got to have this activity going. And the earth signs, of course, the practicality. You know, we can't see it. It's not a tangible thing. And so there's a tendency to try and hold on. And now, I'm not talking about the actual signs. I'm talking about the general influences within the chart. I have a strongly air-oriented chart. And for me, until 5 years ago, it was a totally intellectual approach to life. It was looking only at that which could be scientifically evaluated, mathematically proved, and so on. And to let go of that and to actually experience was the first step to realizing that this intuition will flow. Now then, what is intuition? Various people have got various ideas. If you belong to certain groups, each one will have its own idea. And really, it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter what it is. But some of the ideas are that, for example, Jung's idea of the universal unconscious, something which links us all, really appeals to me. All right? He also, incidentally, defined this as the ultimate understanding of God. That is, the God within us and without us. But this whole concept of the universal consciousness, there is something extra which we don't really know about. Now, we may call this within ourselves our own superconscious mind, our higher consciousness. As we evolve into the various philosophies, we hear words like overself. Some go further, particularly within the spiritualist tradition, of having guides, helpers, things like that. I have my own theories on that, but it really doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. It's the fact that it is there. It is not something which can be proved. It is something which can be experienced only by the individual, and therefore they will always have their own individual theories and hypotheses as to what this actually is. Now, there is an extra dimension to this. If, for example, as many of us do, we have a philosophy of reincarnation, karma, we also may have a belief that we can link into something which is beyond us, which gives us a tuning in ability to everything that is, was, and will be. It is the universe, the universal consciousness. And one of the first things that is necessary is to realize that nothing is impossible. There is no knowledge which is not available to you. The single thing that is required is that you ask, that you mentally ask, because the knowledge is there somewhere. If you can't get it at this moment, don't despair. It is simply that perhaps you are not ready for it. It is not ready for you. Somewhere there, the answer does, however, lie at the right time. And therefore, it is very much a process of asking and letting go. Now, there are various processes of using alpha mind for training, which seem to be very good at getting people to the first levels of this state, whereby they simply become conscious of the fact that everything is available. And therefore, to ask a question that you desire an answer to, and to toss it back into your mind, to the way I think of it, is to open yourself to the answer. All right? Now then, there is another factor to this which I find is extremely valuable in the development of the intuitive faculty, because it acts as a sort of a prompt. And how it works is this, that as we go through life, every single thing we do, see, hear, smell is recorded permanently within our brains. It's like a massive computer which is on continuous run. All right? There is proof of this in brain surgery, certain brain surgery techniques, where in certain procedures they will actually leave the person conscious, and they will take the top of the skull, and as they probe in the brain cells, the person will recall a particular event in absolutely graphic detail, to the extent that they will even be able to smell the atmosphere that was surrounding them at that time, at that precise moment. They will hear the sound, they will smell it, they will see it, they will do everything connected with that moment of time. All right? So that the intuitive is already there. Now then, in terms of our actual function as human beings, to deny the use of the intuitive is, of course, to limit a part of us which is perfectly natural. You know, if you were right-handed, are you going to wander around with your left arm in a sling? All right? Yet that's what we tend to do. as we rationalize, as we intellectualize. We decide that what we are seeing cannot possibly be real. We decide that there must be a good, rational explanation for it. All right? Now, the intellectual process, to my mind, is there to analyze, to a certain degree, the data which we are given. And from there, to also know how we should present it, because we are still responsible, totally and completely, for everything that we present. I have been in situations, because I am involved in many of these different fields, I have been in situations where I have seen a clairvoyant turn around and give a piece of information in a particularly harsh manner to a woman, such that the woman was almost ready to cry as she turned it down. And you could see this so-called clairvoyant putting down the small tack hammer and picking up a bigger and bigger one as she tried to drive this knowledge into the other person's head, and of course making the situation worse and worse. When you are using your intuitive faculties, therefore, you must be conscious of what you are giving. You've got to be conscious of your own reasons for giving. Many people get carried away and decide that everything that they are doing is psychically, intuitively oriented. All right? That is just as bad as deciding that everything you do has to be intellectually oriented. All right? There is supposed to be a harmony and a balance within us. Now then, I said doing nothing. It is a letting go process. It is a realization that what we are doing. For example, when we look at a chart in the first instance, all of us, I would believe, get a gut reaction. There is something that we look at, and there is an instant knowledge when we look at that piece of paper. There is something. Anybody here not experience that when they look at a chart? There's instant reaction. A little earlier, George. 2 days is very short. All right? But nobody put up their hand. Everybody gets that gut feeling. All right? That is the first process of intuition. It's the first process of intuition. Therefore, you are all intuitive. All right? You've already got it. Now all you've got to do is realize it and accept it and know that you have the ability to tune in beyond what you see, beyond what you think you have read, beyond what you think you have experienced in all of your current existence. Now, when we direct it, any questions at that point? Right. When we direct it towards astrology, I have found that there is quite a neat way of going about the development of this, because if we do reading of the right sort at the right time in the right sequences, we will actually, remembering that we store everything, we can, to a certain extent, allow ourselves to initially do the study process and then go on to that next level where we simply read. We simply allow ourselves to absorb the energies which are related to this thing. And this will act very much, it may be, using the subconscious mind. But there is an extra element which does go beyond that. In using your intuitive faculties, you put your neck out. And when you start to use them, you're right about 10% of the time. In fact, the first few times you use it, you're right 100% of the time. Because the moment it starts working, you almost receive, this little flash that lets you see it. And after that, you have to proceed along your life in such manner as to encourage the process to happen. Right? Because then the actual accuracy seems to drop off for a little while, but then the more you use it, the more you allow it to happen, the more it does happen, and the more correctly it happens, and the more readily you get involved in it. When we're talking about the intuitive faculty, we're also opening ourselves up to the possibilities of all of our being. And this is everything from touch healing right through. A few of you are aware that there have been a few people who have experienced that this time around. In my own case, I have actually over the last few weeks been mentally requesting that my own growth go a little further so that I can see a little more. And on hitting Tahara, this is exactly what has happened. It's something that is not explained briefly, but it has happened. It's allowing the process to be. All right? I have just asked mentally, and it happens when the time is right. So this is why several of you have heard me say that this has been a magical weekend for me, because certain things have happened which are truly magical. All right. Now then, there is another factor which I want to bring in very briefly, and that is when people start using the intuitive faculty, we get an awful amount of fear engendered in some people. I do not expect it to be great in this field, but one of the first things that you need to do is to have a very clearly defined philosophy. You've got to have your own personal philosophy clearly defined, because you cannot, of course, be judgmental on anybody if your philosophy is whole. You can't judge another person's philosophy if yours is whole, because, of course, it will preclude the judgment of other people. And that's unless you've got an unusual philosophy, of course. And in this process of evolving your own philosophy, part of it requires that you lost it. Where was it? Before that. Yep. Before that. Before the philosophy.
When you start working with the faculty.
Yeah, fear. Thank you very much. All right. Now, the fear element comes in. And one of the things that you will find is that some people go to very, very great lengths, all right, very great lengths, to what they call protect themselves, all right? And you see it everywhere. I have seen people who are doing healing, going through the most amazing sequences of things. I have seen people preparing to do clairvoyance by doing the most amazing things. To my mind, they're ego-related, firstly, and secondly, they're failing in consciousness at another level. And that is that surely if they need protection then, what had they been doing prior to that they had actually lost this protection? All right? I have, Pisces is a faith. It's a realization that this is a constant state. You are, protected. This is for the ones who begin to hear of reasons to have fear. All right? As this process unfolds, if we think about it carefully, first of all, we go through a state of unknowingness where nothing happens. And at that state, we have various experiences. In my case, I seem to have a remarkable facility for avoiding motor accidents at high speed, where I would go into these quite dramatic spins, and neither the car nor myself would be written off. We would I'd just adjust the car on its route and take off again. And always, however, you sort of mentally think, there's some reason, there's something keeping me together, or, the old one, somebody up there likes me. There's something, all right? So we go through that at that particular stage. We may not even believe in anything as such, but something keeps us together. At the second stage of becoming aware, things happen. Things happen which we frequently either dismiss because we can't possibly understand them, or else we work until we have a rational definition. In my case, I had this habit of being able to walk into people's homes, and if there was somebody missing, I'd say, where is so-and-so? And they'd say, oh, that person's sick. they've got so-and-so wrong. And I'd say, oh, it's so-and-so. You know. And then I would rationalize it out over the next few days that I must have heard something, I must have spoken to the person, I must have picked something up from their conversation or general demeanour to make me know what it was. All right? Until one day, I hadn't seen somebody for about 4 months, and I walked into a house and I said, where is so-and-so? And they said, oh, she's in her room. And I said, well, call an ambulance, she's got kidney stones. And it just about blew my mind, you know. It just happened. It just happened. And that's the way it actually does tend to go. Now, when we're going through that process where we don't know what it is, surely that is the time when things are going to go wrong if they are meant to. That is the time. Not when we get to that final stage of suddenly becoming aware of what we've got, what we can do, how we can use it, and if we begin to use it with love. Because there is nothing that we can do in love which can ever be harmful to another being or the planet. Right? So why should we, at that stage, need to go through some kind of procedure to stop things? And whenever I see people going through procedures, I'm aware so often that they actually cannot then use their intuitive faculty because they have gone straight into the rational mind to go through this process rather than going and bouncing straight into it. All right? Any questions at that point? Yes?
Yeah, just, you're talking about the protection and opening.
Yes.
Don't you think that perhaps when you sort of open your boundaries in the way that you really do sometimes to be intuitive with another personal healing, that there's a possibility you're being very vulnerable, even no matter what space you're in.
Yes.
If that person is ill in some way, you're very vulnerable to their energy. And what my understanding is that some people do protection rituals for that reason. And I associate that in particular with Pisces.
Yes.
Sort of boundless state where perhaps negativity can come in.
No, personally, I realise that there are some people who are on that particular path of needing their own form of protection. All right, some of it can even be in a few people I have seen. It is actually a method of getting themselves out of being themselves. All right, so that they can divorce themselves, divorce what is about to happen to them, or from them, or with them, from their own day-to-day being. It's something which they cannot yet cope with. In other words, they're not coping with their own egos, their own selves. I see this particularly in such things as some mediums and so on whose voices change, or they do something different, all right, and they switch over from one personal being or presence to another personal being or presence. As far as the protection goes, this whole ritual of protection, I feel personally, at this stage, that it is unnecessary. It's totally unnecessary, because theoretically, the intuitive process should be on all the time. We don't switch our minds out. Or rather, turn it the other way around. When we see somebody open their mouth and start speaking, we don't have to consciously switch on the mind, switch on the hearing. It is going all the time. We don't have to switch on our sensory organs in order to feel. All right? We don't have to switch anything on. Why should we have to switch on this intuitive faculty? It should be part of us, which comes into use at the time that it is needed, the same as everything else. All right? My belief is we are permanently protected. My personal philosophy on that ground is that, hang on, let's change it a little. One of the things that I tend to use with people who show the greatest degree of fear is to say to them, do you believe in an entity or force which is greater than yourself, which has protected you or kept you going up till this point? And in most cases they respond with, a look of affront. They back off slightly and they say to me, of course, I believe in God. And my comment then is, good, well, let that force or entity get on with its job and you get on with yours. Because that is faith. All right? So that if you need that, that is it. It's already there. You know, why should it be switched off? Why should we switch it off? You see what I mean? It's there permanently. Yes?
I can't help feel that to a large extent, I feel, if for instance you're clairvoyant or whatever, that when you're dealing with those things, that very often you're dealing with symbols in a symbolic situation where you're invoking, if you like, a consciousness, if you like, that I think that deserves a certain amount of ritualistic respect.
All right. In my considered opinion on this one, I believe that if we are living in such manner as to be respecting of all life, which includes our own, again, we don't need it. It's already, you know, for those people who need it, I would agree with it entirely. But my personal opinion is we don't need it because it is already there. Therefore, if we need it, it is there. Yes?
Well, I should be a little bit mischievous here. Number one, I think probably protection, and what you're talking about, the protection activities which are based on personal paranoia, which often come in ego-based.
Yes.
I take your point and agree with that. I think there are sometimes ceremonial activities which are devices to deal with negative energies, which if they're not done in an egocentric way, with pure motivation, you can sort of invite all sorts of malignant incarnate spirits in and sort of deal with them in the way that they know that they should be dealt, you know, and therefore purify them. This is not so much protection as purification, or what's the favourite word that they always do in the horror movies, exorcism.
Yes.
A lot of properly used, a lot of things people call protection are really exercisation, which is a legitimate technique if you know what you're doing and your ego isn't screwed up, you know.
Yes.
Now, that's one side of it. The other side is that I think what you're doing at the moment is going through a ceremonial activity to invoke protection in us.
Yes.
By saying we don't need it. Now that is a ceremonial act in itself. So you are protecting us all. And you're going through this great... So thank you very much.
Peter.
The other side of the penny is that when we think we're asking for protection, we are really serving penance for previous transgressions and admitting them as such.
Yes,
there's no need for protection unless one feels one has previously transgressed.
That's right. That's right. I have seen this particularly with people, you know, they will get hold of tarot cards or something. I had a woman walk into the shop one day and point at the counter and say, I must buy myself some new tarot cards. She said, I had to throw the old ones out. And I said, oh, did you? She said, yes. I said, why was that? She said, too many people had handled them. I said, I said, have you ever considered how many people handled those cards in the course of manufacture? There were 78 cards. They probably came off 78 different sheets with a dozen or so different operators handling them. That then they were chopped up by somebody else or several other people. And then they were packed. And then they were shipped. And then they were handled by the wholesalers, the storekeeper, and so on and so forth. And then they arrived in your hand and you didn't give a second's thought to them and to how many people had already handled them. And furthermore, if that person could not make them theirs, make them their cards, then they shouldn't be using them. Right? I had a perfect example of this last night. I picked up a fresh set of cards, and I haven't read cards for a few months. Picked up a fresh set of cards from over there. We did a shuffle, and we got a very good reading, particularly for the state that I was in and so on. All right? But there was a fresh pack of cards, and all those people who have made them and sent them out here have already handled them. You know, I know it's associated with your own belief system, but I'm suggesting that we put a hell of a lot of regalia and so on around something which doesn't really need it. We should be in this state of awareness at all times. All right? It switches on when we need it. Okay. A good example of this, of course, is the people. I know one very, very. There is one person. She's dropped out of clairvoyancy at the moment. She was the best one at regalia that I've ever known, and so on. She used to go through what she called aura cleansings. All right. She would take off shields. She would move around until she found a spot where she could get showered with light, and it took her about 10 minutes to actually get ready. And then she talked for 3 minutes, and none of it would make any sense. You could run into her in the street, and she'd be chatting, "Oh, hi, how are you? Rave. Oh, by the way, I see so-and-so. Oh, do you know so-and-so is going to happen?" Bang, bang, bang. She didn't think about it. She just did it. She was very, very good, as long as she wasn't asked to do it.
Robert, on this point of fear, there usually reactions to that, either fight or flight, so they tell me.
Yes.
And in their rationalisation to try and go
Yes.
away from it, when you say that mental telepathy is the excuse for you running away from your approach to the intuition?
Mental telepathy.
When you feel you're getting, well, as you said before, you're in a room,
Yes.
and you're speaking to a person,
Yes.
and you think, oh, you've got so-and-so, and you rationalise yourself out of
Yes.
it. I wasn't doing anything with that woman, it's just that I was reading her mind or mental.
Oh, yes. That often amuses me, actually. People say, "Oh, yes, I was only reading their mind," you know, as if this is something different, you know.
It's got an escape route, isn't it?
Yeah, it is an escape route. I've heard actually psychologists get to and say they were only reading their minds. You know, what a crazy statement. That's exactly what we're talking about. You know, but as intuition, it's impossible. But somehow, as reading the mind, it becomes possible. You know, we've got to look at that fairly well for ourselves. But my suggestion is that it's already part of us. With regard to fear, there's a delightful little phrase that goes, "The human can only experience two emotions. One is love, the other is fear. But fear is always based in the past. Therefore, in terms of today, it is an illusion. It is not real. And therefore, only love is real. Therefore, if you were working with the concept of love, and that includes for yourself as well as for others, I mean, if you don't love you, who else will? Then you can't obviously come to harm, and neither can you cause harm. So, you know, we can let go of fear in all things, and especially in this field where there seems to be the greatest feeling that there must be fear.
Well, can I just say
Yes.
something? I mean, it's all really wonderful what you're saying,
Yep.
and it's
Astrology.
I feel it's absolutely true. But as you talk, I see your chart. I see first house, Pisces rising, Pisces sun, and the axis, your conscious axis, your self-identity is basically
Yes.
this absolute faith, this knowledge that the universe is.
Yes. I am suggesting to you that perhaps Pisces is here, among other things, to show people that this is their level of teaching for humanity, that everybody has got it. Everybody's got Pisces in their chart. Everybody has got Neptune in their chart. All you have to do is let go. Let go of the thought that you can't and realize that you can. And you realize that you can simply by saying, all right, I'll try, I'll ask, I'll mentally think this one through, and I will ask for something. All right? It's a very good move to read certain other people's ideas. Go into a shop, read through a couple of pages, because nobody can teach you how to do it. They can only show how they do it, and perhaps give you pointers as to how you may try, because it's an esoteric thing. All right, but we've all got it. We've all got the capability to do it. You too, Helen. Exactly. And the other thing is not to justify, not to rationalise what you're doing as being something which you must have evolved, because you'll find out that whenever you try to rationalize an intuitive process, you have to go the most amazingly circuitous route, which if you then take the consciousness and rationalize that out, you'll realize that it would have taken you too long.
That's the Virgo Pisces axis, though, isn't it? It's letting go of the Virgo.
Yes.
Thinking mental process.
Yes.
Pisces.
Yes. Now then, any other questions at that point?
I'd just like to reiterate from everybody else's members that I can relate to what you're saying. It's happened to me a few times, but I get this feeling I push it away until it's really none of my business if I pick it up. Something about somebody else, and I put it aside. To me, it seems to be interfering. You pick up something from somebody else.
Well, it depends. You know, at times you will begin to, you will pick things up. I have once or twice been, particularly after I've had a very long session, a very long day, found out that I was still in that state and realised, you know, this is stupid, and you just go and read. I usually go and read or do something to flick out of it. If you know, it very, very rarely happens that that does go, but in those cases, it is the intellectual, rational mind and your common sense which comes into play to decide how this information can or should be used, or if it should be used. You know, obviously. Peter?
She's touched on a very important point there, though. The first few times it comes involuntarily.
Yes.
At that stage, when it ceases to become mostly involuntary,
Yes.
you get the stage of, are you doing it from a curiosity point of view?
Yes.
Or are you doing it because this is information you should be using and unconsciously or consciously could do something with it other than just store it away in a curiosity box?
That's right.
And the problem she's mentioned is the area where most people go astray, if there is such a thing as going astray.
Yes.
And that is taking the incident in itself and curiously going around and saying, ooh, what have you got? What can I say
Yes.
with you? And that's a very dangerous
That's
situation,
right.
which is not necessary to go through if you are saying, well, I've got this information, it's not for me, who's it for, what can I do with it?
Yes.
And by passing it on as being purely the intermediary channel, you're not collecting bits and pieces of idle curiosity.
That's right. That's very, very important. Very important. There's an interesting thing that if you can get yourself into a situation of actually trying these things out with people on the understanding that, 70 or 80% of it may be garbage to start with, all right? You can actually try it out, develop it, and knowing that it is, by common consensus, this is going to be something where you actually work in this process, that you get together, you decide to try, to allow, find out whether something is coming through, and then the more you pass out, the more you go. Sometimes you will get a word, or you will get, you may hear it, you may see it as a word within your consciousness, you may see it as a symbol. Frequently in astrology, people begin by picking up the astrological symbolism intuitively. They will pick up a symbolism attached to a person, all right? When they start allowing this to flow. This is what has been happening actually to George, George, who's only into his second day of astrology. He has a previous connection into the intuitive fields and the healing arts and so on. But he was talking with me over dinner last night when I happened to mention a thing that I went through that involved 3 paths. And he's turned around and he said, that reminds me of the symbol for Neptune, the trident. You see, as he's looking at me. Well, I'm a Pisces with Pisces rising. He didn't have the consciousness, he didn't have the direct, he hadn't reached the stage of knowing that Neptune actually rules Pisces. But he associated the symbol with me as I was doing it. Right? And that sort of thing will happen. And much of it does happen in symbols in a sort of a thought form. Now then, within astrology particularly, you can enhance your capability by raising your own consciousness in what you are learning. And one of the processes that I'm going to suggest that you'll try for yourself is to actually get, first of all, collect for yourself some photos, drawings, pictures, good ones, of all the planets. All right? You start off there. And you collect with them a good, reasonably sized symbol for each of the planets and bodies. And you also, having put those together and just seen them, particularly a colour photo, really absorb that energy. See the body. We'll go through this in a few moments with some of them. See the body in space. See it in the blackness. Impose the glyph for that planet upon it. And then you can simply, once you've got that in your mind, try reading through, just reading quickly over a list of keywords. You know, things like the that rulership book, which some of you have seen. You can just scan through. Just scan through. Remembering that your mind is recording everything that you see, including that which you are creating in your own mind. And you're putting them all together, and you're keeping that consciousness of the body, the glyph, and the key words. I also suggest that within this exercise, at some point, you also read the mythology, because the mythology of the planets and the signs is incredible. It's really incredible to read about it, to read about Ares, the Roman god of war. I think it's the Roman. And Mars, the Greek god of war. And, right, other way around. Mars of Rome and Ares of Greek. And you read through them and you're putting them all together. And the whole idea is to effectively bring this into your consciousness. Now, what you are going to be effectively doing in the first instance is that you are going to be drawing upon that subconscious knowledge whenever you begin to see the planet. Another thing is, go out and look at the stars, look at the planets that are visible. If you don't know where they are, find the moon, check your ephemeris and relate it to the moon. Find out where it is. That's quite a good way. You can cover all of them in a month. All right? Getting all of that knowledge is getting it into your mind. Now then, the next level that happens is that when you look at the glyph on a page, okay, the keywords are there if you want them as a straight intellectual exercise. But if you allow your mind to if you just look at the glyph, it should stir up, once you've done it sufficiently, it will stir up every key word that you have ever read about that particular glyph. It will do it. And the next thing that happens is that the intuitive faculty will then come along and tell you which one is right. And that's the bit that you can't control, that's the bit that you can't handle. All right? That's the bit that you can't make happen. You just look at it and suddenly you see something which is completely unorthodox. I did the charts for a husband and wife at one time, and in both of them, the planet Uranus was very important. One of them had Uranus at the midheaven, the other had Uranus in the fifth house. He was at the midheaven, her at the fifth house. And I was tired at the time, and tiredness, incidentally, a state of slight tiredness where you've lost the intellectual faculty can be quite useful in terms of allowing it to flow a little bit better as long as you don't do it too much, which I'm inclined to do at times, as one or two know. But what happened with this was that I was differentiating what the specific importance of this was, because I knew it was important. And in his case, he was really lost as to the direction, but he wasn't giving me too many clues as to the various jobs that were possible. He was talking about management jobs, and I was looking at Uranus in his chart, and, excuse this expression, an articulated truck went by in my mind. All right? And it was as stupid as that. And I said, it's trucking. Now, it turned out that there were about 4 or 5 choices that I could have had in terms of the various jobs he's had, and all of them had been related. He'd been a motor mechanic, he'd been involved with the mechanics around the sawmill. This was the trucking enterprise part of the sawmill, and so on and so forth. And these pieces just kept, they were all possibilities, all right? But this one just specifically came out. And that was something which was beyond the conscious control. It was allowed to happen. So, Peter very kindly got from the Auckland Observatory for me, first of all, a chart of the solar system. And I really ask you, how many of you have ever bothered to look at a chart of the solar system? How many of you have looked at it? All right, good. It's a good number. Those of you who haven't should, because you were involved in it. All right? You really should. And this is quite a delightful little chart, because of all things, here is an astronomical piece with all the glyphs in, all the way across. It has it has even got to the stage of having, for example, the winged messenger carrying his caduceus beside a photo of the planet Mercury. All right? We won't talk about whether they're getting magical suddenly, but all right. There is data on each one of them. The speed of rotation. This crazy information that if you feed yourself, all becomes relevant when you go to use it, and it stirs up. So you're raising your consciousness, and the next level is that the intuitive will select what it needs, so that you can go on through this. We've got the orbits. It's very useful to know. We've got the relative sizes from an absolute dot for Pluto to a tiny touch of the Sun. You can start getting relativities. So we learn as much as we can about our planets, about the bodies that we're doing. We've put them all together. Alan Oken seems to be pretty good in terms of the mythology. He's got a lot of mythology in his book, all right? So that he actually gets it too. The symbolism, mythology, and history of Mercury. He includes the caduceus. He includes everything there, because of course the caduceus is involved in healing, all right? And what is healing connected with in terms of Mercury? Somebody? Virgo. All right? So we're getting into the Virgo aspects of Mercury. So there's the messenger with caduceus. So we've got both Gemini and Virgo involved. So what I've got here, they're not coming up particularly well. But what I want
the lights out.
I suppose we could actually. Could you try pulling the curtains, please? Even the Leonine people. Right. All right. We'll just try a few of them. We'll just have a look at the actual consciousness which is available on each of these things to a certain extent. So when we're looking at this the sun, it's to my mind it's not a particularly good photo. It's more designed for you to see the sun spots. But while you're looking at that picture of the sun, incidentally, there is a suite out called the Planet Suite by Holst. All right. I think personally, I feel Mars is good, and that's about it. Mars is brilliant. How do others of you feel? Pardon? Jupiter's great. Right.
Uranus is all right. Saturn's a bit negative.
Saturn's negative. Yeah, I wasn't terribly wrapped in Neptune or Uranus actually.
Neptune get a bit lost in.
Yeah. Yeah, but it actually.
I love Venus.
Oh, Venus is beautiful. Venus is, yes, loves Venus, yes, very good. All right. It's worth listening. It is actually, it's worth listening to. it is worth listening to, and at the same time sitting there in a dark room, shutting your eyes and just seeing the planet or the body in the darkness of space, and just try to get the feeling, try to get the whole sensation that surrounds it. But what we'll do here is, using these slides, we're looking, of course, at the sun, and what I want you to do is to just bring that into your mind. You're looking at it, you're thinking of the sunlight, you're thinking of the warmth, you're thinking of the vitality, and as you're thinking of these words, of course, you're also bringing in key words connected with them. At the same time, you impose within your mind, or on the screen, however you want to do it, you impose upon it the symbol for the sun. The circle with a dot. Just put it in black over the top of it. It's a good practice in visualization too.
I think with the sun and moon, it's, I mean, even more effective to go outside.
Oh, absolutely.
Visualize.
Yes,
You know,
absolutely. But we can't even look directly at the sun. Yes.
other planets.
That's right. That's right. So we look there at the sun, and while we do it, we think of vitality, we think of the life force, we think of the particular sun energies, and we relate them with all the key words and so on, the words of Leo and so on, until we've really got that one through. All right? Now, although I've got eclipses included in this set, it's interesting because, of course, if we have a look at them, we get an idea that we can even look at that and think in terms of what an eclipse is doing. It's really doing. The light is still there. It is only us who cannot see it. They can on every other planet. All right? So we're looking at the eclipse. And there is a lunar eclipse. It's quite beautiful, isn't it? And so we're thinking of there. And while we're there, we'll use that one for the moon. So while you're looking at that of the moon, only it would, of course, be more silver. Think of the fact of its reflecting light, the reflective properties of it, the gentleness of it, the way it bathes the earth so softly. You put the symbol of the moon on top of it. Not that you really need to, but there we go. There is Mercury. That is actually which is a Mariner 10, isn't it, Peter? Yeah, I think it's a Mariner 10 on a bypass headed into the sun. There's a photo sent back of Mercury. Small, fast. Put the symbol of Mercury on it. It's not as easy, that one, but
It's very electric, isn't
it is.
it? Very electricity.
Feel it.
It's a bit sad that through this slide, they all have the same size.
Yes, that's right.
Almost
Well, this.
sensual to have them different.
That's right. That's right. But
If you look at the pole, it almost has the symbol embedded on it, doesn't it?
it has, isn't it? All right. So we proceed on to Venus. And Venus, you know, it has a lot more mystery about it than we usually give it credit, doesn't it? It is the lower octave of Neptune, the clouds. Any of you who know the tarot, I always see this as what is Isis veiled, or the, which is it? What's her name? High Priestess, yes. All right. But there you're looking, the gentleness, the apparent softness, and impose upon it. Impose upon it the symbol of Venus. Now Mars is, regrettably, we can't really get a very close one. But Mars actually is fascinating, even to look without binoculars or telescope or something, because of course the redness of Mars is apparent in the sky. In fact, far more apparent than that particular photo is. I find that a particularly difficult one, probably to use in terms of consciousness, but we're looking at purely at the planet there. Here, however, are two photos of Jupiter, and I believe this is recording a new sunspot, is it, Peter? A new spot on Jupiter. All right, that's a newly discovered area on Jupiter. And you're looking at Jupiter, and you're looking at all the complexities of it, and the turbulence and the turmoil, and of course, if you look at the chart and in comparative sizes, you are looking at an enormous mass. There's an interesting part to that, of course, and that is that Jupiter could theoretically become a second sun in our solar system, because it is the only body which emits energy. All right? And the majority of suns are apparently double. This it's an interesting point. Ours is a single sun, and so there is Jupiter with its.
Which emits energy.
It actually emits radiation of various sorts, similar in scope to that of the sun itself. Jupiter actually emits energy, electromagnetic energy. Right, anybody know further on that, incidentally? Would be somebody would know. But while you're looking at Jupiter, particularly if you can get a good-sized photo of it, or picture of it, and to put the symbol of Jupiter on it, think of Jove and Zeus in mythology, put together with all the key words. There's beautiful Saturn. Isn't it magnificent? But look how perfect it is. Look at its form. Look how it really does manage to bring that in. It seems to have a beauty, but with a coldness associated with it. But the perfection of it. And there's an interesting one next, as far as I'm concerned. There are the rings. Are these enhanced, Peter, or?
Yes, they are.
Yeah. And there are the rings of Saturn. Again, this is a photograph from one of the probes going out. The next ones, these are all we have at the moment of anything beyond Saturn. We're waiting, of course, for the flyby on Neptune and Pluto in about 6 years' time, aren't we? But
Has it gone past Uranus yet, Troy?
I think Uranus is... No, it hasn't gone past Uranus. I don't think it goes anywhere near Uranus, does it? Anybody know that one? I don't think it goes past Uranus. And there is Pluto. All right? Now, Pluto is a fascinating one, because if you visualize it, you can best visualize it as a ball of very jagged rock, apparently. I've seen a beautiful artistic representation of this, of rather jagged rock with great lakes of frozen methane, frozen gases. And the picture that I saw, the artistic representation that I saw, was looking across the lake towards the sun. And the sun was shown as an absolute, just an intense pinprick of light, just a pinpoint of light, so that the sun appears as a star, from a distant star from Pluto. All right? There's you. Obviously, that one's harder. There is an excellent book which is put out by Macmillan. I can't remember the name of it. It's a sort of a long book, about that size, with a black cover, and it's got all sorts of things in it which I found absolutely fascinating. Everything from the ideas, scientists' ideas and representations of what probably happens on these various planets, from flashes of lightning in Neptune's cloud. Yeah, Carl Sagan's book is good, but this one seems to be, this is much more compact, and it is purely dealing with the planets, including the moons of Jupiter and the various moons of the planetary system, which no doubt will have significance one day. All right? But this is the way that you go through. You just wander through and you try to absorb as much energy as possible, because it is all there. and then you allow the rest to happen. Right, yeah. Any questions at that point? Or no? Are you reasonably happy that you can do something? How many of you have actually allowed the intuitive faculty to work before? All right. How many are going to allow it to work from now? All right. Right. All you have to do is realize it's there. Okay? Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were putting up your hand. Yeah.
The only limitation is limitation itself.
Exactly.
And that's what you put on yourself.
Exactly. You know, Saturn is of limitations. Remember that there are more planets beyond Saturn now. All right, and they tend to be those which are connected with the intuitive processes. All right, transcendental, yes. All right, and they are all connected with this. Those within my age group have got a rather interesting relationship between Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, which sort of precludes me from knowing exactly which one is operating, because I've got them in fairly close. I've got Uranus trine Neptune with Pluto sextile to both at the midpoint, and you can't really tell which one is operating. Obviously, at any point, they'd move too slowly to get out of orb. All right. Now, there are other things you can do. You can begin to realize that everything is symbology, and one of the best ways of increasing your knowledge of the symbology is doing such things as tarot. Several of us here, quite a large number of us, have used or use the tarot. You can use the I Ching as another thing. All the way along, realize that you are getting symbols. And the symbols have to be interpreted. But your symbols are yours. All right? Nobody else may be able to interpret them. It is up to you to say what you believe them to be, always within the stricture that you are responsible for what you deliver. All right? Thank you. Have we got much time left? 10 to 3. How much?
We'll close in 10 minutes.